God's grace, peace, and welcome to you. It's our midweek reflections during this week of Holy Week. Our chance to turn to, perhaps for some of us, some familiar scriptures that follow each day of Holy Week, from Palm Sunday all the way up to Easter. As every year we read these familiar scriptures, they're scriptures, in fact, that read us and say, how do we, where do we find ourselves in this story? And what's our opportunity to find ourselves there this year? Well, it's Wednesday. And Wednesday of Holy Week, after a Monday of disruption, after a Tuesday of conflict, on Wednesday, the story pauses and becomes about leadership. What kind of leadership is needed to be a follower of this Jesus on this Jesus way of love and justice? And today, for today's reading, we get the first example. The first believer, the first model leader of what it means to walk on this Jesus way, to be a leader on this Jesus way. And well, it looks a little different than perhaps what we expected. Boy, has it been a year that we have talked so much about leadership. We haven't all been of one mind about it, of course, about the kind of leadership we need, the quality of leadership we need. But boy, we've had so many different examples of what leadership can look like in a time of crisis. The story today perhaps pops open our imaginations in a new way about the way of leadership, about the who of leadership, and about the kind of leaders we really need to be looking for that perhaps we haven't been seeing or recognizing. So this comes from the Gospel of Mark again, chapter 14. Now, it was only 2 days of the 8th day festival of Passover, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread would begin. Only in 2 days, the 8-day festival of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread would begin. And the high priests and religious scholars were looking for a way that they could seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. And they agreed that it should not be done during the Passover week, for we don't want the crowds up in arms, they said. Now Jesus was at Bethany and a guest of Simon the leper. And while Jesus was eating dinner, a woman came up carrying a bottle of very expensive perfume. Opening the bottle, she poured it on Jesus' head, and some of the guests became furious among themselves. That's criminal, a sheer waste. This perfume could have been sold for well over a year's wages and handed over to the poor. They swelled up in anger, nearly bursting with indignation over her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why are you giving her a hard time? She has just done something wonderfully significant for me. You know, you will have the poor with you every day for the rest of your lives, Whenever you feel like it, you can do something for them, but not so with me. She did what she could when she could. She pre-anointed my body for burial. And you can be sure that wherever in the whole world the message is preached, what she did is going to be talked about admiringly. Well, Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the cabal of high priests and determined to betray Jesus. He couldn't believe their ears and promised to pay him well. And he started looking for just the right moment to hand him over. I started here on February 1st last year. My very first time of being an interim pastor. Loved my adventure of a time I was in my life, having left home of 3,000 miles away to be here in this whole new place. Loved my first 5 weeks of running around and meeting people, meeting some of you in person. For some of us, the last time we saw each other in person. And then, just a year ago, and the world turned and our worlds turned, and most of you have only known me on live stream or as a little square on Zoom. When I came, I thought I knew a lot about leadership and what the opportunity of leadership in this place could be about. Perhaps, like me, you too have thought, well, a good leader should be the one who has it all figured out, who knows what to do, who can be decisive and clear, who has a good sense of setting schedules and making plans and follows through and does them. Yeah, perhaps I'd been a good leader in some of those ways before. But with the pandemic breaking out, a whole new different kind of leadership was needed. In a whole new place, a whole different kind of leadership was needed. I couldn't figure it all out. I certainly didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't reach out in this whole new way of physical distancing and connect with all the people that I knew needed to be connected with and to. But together, we figured out a different way of leadership. And it's what this nameless woman with a jar of precious perfume points to us, shows us about that way of leadership. For some, you might call it servant leadership. It was a way of leadership that said, we're not going to leave it all to you, Jesus, to figure out. But she pointing the way of, if we're going to be leaders on this way of Jesus, we got to participate in it. We got to help make it happen. We got to break open the perfume and bless him before it is too late. How many times we'd rather just be Judas? We all have him in us. I'd rather not participate. Rather go away, go off and find another way versus through. But in the past year, and on this Wednesday, I just want to recognize again all of you who have stepped forth in this community, in our wider communities, in your families, in your friendships, into a servant leadership way. Here, it took us all together, day after day in the beginning and week after week as this year has gone by, to get together, to puzzle together, to wonder together, to ask, what now? What should we do? And together we found our way, day by day, sometimes moment by moment. We all reached out. In these little boat clusters, we connected with each other. We just checked in. We continue to do so. We reached out and we found, well, we could share Thanksgiving dinner with people, and we did. We made an ordination happen that couldn't happen in the ordinary, normal way, happen in an abundant, joyful, new way outside as we celebrated Brian's ordination on the common. In so many ways, brainstorming, reaching out, conversation together, we found our way. And perhaps in it all, you discovered and learned, like I did, about the kind of leadership we need. That servant leadership, when we need to be willing to lean in together, to listen and wonder together, to know and remember God in the midst of it, with us together. And step by step, to find our way. Will you join me in prayer? God, in this time of crisis, help us all to find our feet, to find our breath, and to find our way. Thank you for the gift of the story of a woman who shows us the way of participation, the way of servanthood, the way of pointing that the way we will find our way is not alone, but together, not despite our vulnerability, but through it. God, recall us all to this way, to your way, to this Jesus way of servant leadership. Amen.